Welcome, everyone. We are just getting started. We are live on Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, Telegram, Twitch, and X. We're going to be covering Maduro's capture today, as well as the Minneapolis ICE shooting. And we're going to be doing a forensic analysis on that shooting to see what the law says about it and who was at fault and who was in the right. So that being said, you want to just introduce yourself, Robin, maybe give a few comments on what we're going to be covering today before we get into the first article and source.
Yes, my name is Robin Austin, and I'm with MediaNow.world. And these are obviously things that are in the headlines that I think people need to be aware of. This is the kind of thing that really has an impact, and I'd like to get into what I think that impact is and give you a little bit of a deeper analysis on each of those things. So I'm eager to chat with you today, and thank you for joining us. Be sure, if you want to like, share, and upvote us if you if you'd like to do it.
All right, so let's get into the first article, which is a article I wrote for the News4us website. We recently relaunched it. I had to take it down few months back because it was taking up too much memory and real estate hard drive wise on the server, so I decided to revamp it since a lot of the coverage we did previously was already outdated and already old news. So, Maduro captured and deposed. Maduro captured and deposed by Stephen Phillips, January 13th, 2026 at 6:55 p.m. This was published today. On Friday, January 2nd, in the late hours, approximately at 10:46 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the order was given by President Trump to begin Operation Absolute Resolve. At approximately 2 a.m. Caracas local time, U.S. airstrikes targeted several locations as the mission began. The BBC confirmed 5 locations targeted by U.S. airstrikes, including Geronimo Francisco de Miranda Air Base, an airfield known as La Carlota, and Port La Guaira, Caracas's main conduit to the Caribbean Sea. Following Maduro being captured, President Trump was quoted as saying, "The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly," suggesting that the U.S. cut power to Caracas before the mission to capture Maduro began. By 4:20 a.m. local Caracas time on Saturday, January 3rd, the U.S. military had Maduro captured in addition to his wife. Military helicopters were leaving Venezuelan airspace and en route ultimately to New York. New York is where Maduro was indicted in 2020. Maduro is expected to face criminal charges in the United States. For a visual breakdown of the whole operation and how it was accomplished, see the below video, courtesy of the YouTube channel AI Telly. So we're going to watch this real quick and then resume the article.
How do you capture a high-value target when the whole world is watching? You create a masterclass in deception. The CIA set the stage with a single building as bait and filled the sky with 150 aircraft to create a deafening sonic shield for the helicopters to drop Delta forces. F-35s lit up the perimeter, turning night into day. By the time the dust settled, the helicopters had already touched down and Maduro was gone. We'll also look at how the U.S. uses the F-35 jets and its Navy to launch a large-scale attack, all in the video ahead. In the dead of night that is 2 in the morning, the lights went out in Caracas. By 5 a.m., the president of Venezuela was gone. But how U.S. played a deception games. While the whole world were focused on the aircraft carriers in the Caribbean, a shadow war was being fought on the ground. This wasn't an invasion, it was a surgical extraction. We finally have the declassified timeline of how U.S. forces breached the heart of Caracas and extracted Nicolas Maduro. Let's start with step 1. The setup. This didn't happen overnight. For months, the U.S. had been tightening a naval quarantine around Venezuela. The U.S. Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group and the U.S. Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group were parked off the coast. The pretext was clear. The U.S. designated the Venezuelan government a narco-terrorist state, specifically targeting the drugs lords, but while the Navy squeezed the coast, intelligence assets were tracking one man. They waited for a specific window, a moment where Maduro was stationary and vulnerable. Step 2. The strike. It began at exactly 2 in the morning Venezuelan Standard Time. High above, several F-35 stealth fighters punch a hole through the enemy lines, destabilizing their anti-air defenses. like these Russian S-300 missiles located all over the strategic high-value target. With the skies cleared, the path opens for Delta Force helicopters to fly straight towards the mission. Here comes the deception as the helicopters flew. The jets started firing with more strikes as it hit Fort Tuna, the main military base and command center, and La Carlova Air Base, destabilizing Venezuelan air support. Reports from the ground described widespread explosions and a sudden communications blackout. The chaos wasn't the goal, it was the cover. But how did the raid happen? We have to look at Step 3. Under the cover of darkness and chaos, the Tier 1 operators went to work. But what is the exact unit tasked with the mission? It is the Delta Force, one of the most elite secretive special forces units in the US military. Witnesses in Caracas reported low-flying aircraft skimming the rooftops, flying well below radar coverage. The team breached a secure compound believed to be a safe house within the massive Fort Tuna complex. Resistance from the Venezuelan Presidential Guard was swift but ultimately futile, as the helicopters lay cover fire. The operators moved with surgical speed, landing on multiple points. But how exactly the capture and extraction happened? For this, let's look at Step 4. Specialized helicopters hovered over the objective to insert the assault team. While dozens of attack helicopters laid down suppression fire, the Delta Special Forces descended and started the search for the high-value targets. How did they find him? Simple. The CIA had planted spy inside Nicolás Maduro close circle. While back in the US, Delta Force built an exact replica of his safe house, rehearsing the raid until they could do it blindfolded. While operators breached the room so fast, his security could not even react to the situation as the sound of flash grenades disoriented the security guard. Using blowtorch, they caught him before he could even lock all the doors. Maduro's shock and awe froze him as Delta Force breached the compound. Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, were physically secured. This wasn't a negotiation. They were detained and immediately moved to the extraction point. These aircraft are capable of performing urban extractions from buildings and refueling in midair. Within minutes, they were airborne, leaving Venezuelan airspace and heading to a secure floating staging base in the Caribbean. This Operation Southern Spear has changed the geopolitical map of South America overnight. But wait, before after the extractions, there were reports of F-35 jets also leading the tip of the spear for the attack. We'll look how the United States used F-35 jets instead of F-16s for operations in Venezuela, because this is a well-organized and militarized Venezuela has positioned advanced Russian S-300 missile systems, Chinese radar networks, integrated Russian air defenses, and Shahed drones along its borders. This creates a highly lethal and challenging environment that older S-16s would struggle to survive. As stated, around 150 aircrafts and a massive 8 U.S. destroyers were stationed there. It also has 3 amphibious aircraft carrier and surveillance plane to turn it into a massive command and control juggernaut capable of overcoming a modern military's air defenses. Signals a readiness to counter Venezuela's entire air defense network if necessary. But why Venezuela Air Force failed to intercept? As of 2025, Venezuela's fighter jet fleet consists mainly of approximately 21 Sukhoi Su-30 multirole fighters delivered by Russia between 2006 and 2008, which now form the backbone of their combat air power. Additionally, they maintain about 5 operational F-16 Fighting Falcons from an older batch, including 3 single-seat S-16As and 2 two-seat S-16Vs. These S-16s are aging and suffer from limited maintenance and part support due to U.S. sanctions, although they have been supplemented with Israeli upgrades. Venezuela acquired its F-16 jets from the United States through a foreign military sales agreement called Peace Delta in May 1982, during a period of good diplomatic and military relations. They were the first Latin American country to receive the S-16, with deliveries occurring between 1983 and 1985. The reason the U.S. does not use F-16s in current operations is because these jets lack the stealth capabilities necessary to evade the S-300 and other integrated defenses. The advanced S-300V or Anti-2500 systems, supported by dense Chinese and Russian radar, can easily detect and target older aircraft at long ranges. Sending F-16s into such an environment would result in high attrition risks, as they are vulnerable to radar detection and missile engagement. Not to forget the Russian Buk air defense system that can take out an S-16 with ease. These are cheap R-15 or 24 Buk systems are already active and mobile all over the country. Additionally, F-16s are less effective in contested airspace saturated with drones, especially the Iranian Shahed drones used by Venezuela for reconnaissance and kamikaze strikes. The F-35, however, offers crucial advantages. Its stealth design enables it to fly undetected or with much lower risk, making it effective against advanced surface-to-air missiles and networked radar systems. Its sensor fusion, electronic warfare, and data link capabilities allow it to simultaneously suppress and target mobile and fixed air defense positions, adapting rapidly to counter Russian and Chinese radar configurations. While the aircrafts took out the anti-air defenses Venezuelan military as a whole, this allowed the CIA and special forces to advance towards its target. The overwhelming presence of advanced Russian, Chinese, Iranian, and indigenous air defense and drone systems on the Venezuelan border means that the stealth fighter jets, or the first wave of attack, provide both the survivability and strike capability required for such operations. But how do they rotate clockwise? Well, the distance from Puerto Rico to Venezuela is about 1,300 kilometers. This is roughly 810 miles, which translates to around 1.5 hours of flight time for an F-35 flying at high subsonic speeds. These jets rotated clockwise as its combat radius is approximately 770 miles, meaning it can reach most of Venezuela from Puerto Rico with careful fuel management and limited loitering. To extend mission time and reach deeper inland, air-to-air refueling tankers deployed strategically in the Caribbean region support these operations. In situations requiring strikes within minutes, U.S. amphibious assault ships equipped with F-35Bs can launch jets rapidly. From such ships positioned in the Caribbean, F-35Bs can reach Venezuelan targets within roughly 15 to 10 minutes, depending on speed and route. Targets typically include narco-traffickers' networks, air defense installations, command centers, and drone facilities, enabling flexible sea-based strike options against both Venezuelan military and criminal infrastructure. In essence, the F-35 deployment by the U.S. near Venezuela redefines military capabilities in the region. It combines stealth, advanced sensors, electronic warfare, and networked operations to overcome sophisticated air defenses and maintain persistent air superiority and rapid strikeability against a broad spectrum of targets in Venezuela. This reflects a strategy that goes beyond counter-narcotics to deter and, if necessary, decisively counter the Venezuelan military threat. We also made a deep dive into the sea, air, and land components of the nuclear triad, so subscribe for more videos to not miss a beat.
Regarding the geopolitical and foreign policy implications of this operation and its success, it is not difficult to see why the Trump administration handled the Venezuela situation the way that it chose to. What most people don't even realize is that China and Russia were exploiting the Venezuelan oil reserve through backroom deals with the Maduro regime to buy that oil at a less than crude oil rate. On January 2nd, the day before the operation, Chinese officials arrived in Venezuela for talks with Maduro. Breaks news. Just in, Chinese official arrived in Venezuela for talks with President Nicolas Maduro. This was posted 7:29 p.m. January 2nd, 2026. Let's take a deeper look at the relationship between China and Venezuela over the last 20 years and why it's important, courtesy of U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission. And this was actually put out today, so I'll encourage the viewers to go and check this out on the article. It's got a lot of information in it, but we're just going to be going over the key takeaways here on the live. Key takeaways from the China-Venezuela fact sheet. Venezuela has been one of China's closest partners in Latin America. China's relationship with Venezuela grew rapidly after Hugo Chavez was elected in 1998. In 2023, the two countries elevated their relationship to an all-weather strategic partnership, a high-level diplomatic designation that signals long-term cooperation across politics, trade, energy, and other areas. Beijing has developed deep economic ties with Venezuela over the past 2 decades. Chinese policy banks loaned more to Venezuela than any other Latin American country. At least $10 billion in Chinese bank loans is outstanding. China also purchases most of Venezuela's oil, which accounts for over half of Venezuela's fiscal revenue, despite U.S. sanctions. Venezuela is the largest purchaser of Chinese military equipment in Latin America. China has also constructed and retains access to 2 satellite tracking stations within Venezuela. While the all-weather partnership reflects deep ties, it does not create formal security guarantees. Based on this information, it is clear, in my personal opinion, that China was sent a powerful message by the Trump administration due to the timing and success of Operation Absolute Resolve. Even more telling is the Russians' reaction to Maduro's capture. Here we have a viral Telegram post in reaction to the capture of Maduro, courtesy of liberal hive mind.
I got a viral Telegram post here, which I think offers some perspective. Russians are freaking out over this Maduro development. This is a direct translation of this Russian Telegram post. This is not effing funny. You underdeveloped idiots. I think underdeveloped is probably the direct translation for the R word. Soon it won't even be profitable for us to extract oil. In a couple months, we'll starve to death. This is checkmate for the entire economy of underdeveloped traitor Putin. May he perish, a real bastard, a talentless, stinking piece of expletive trash. This is a nightmare for us. They will drop the price of oil below the floor and take over the entire market. Now, on top of everything else, they'll also have oil. This is a total effing disaster, and we'll be left without internet, drowning in taxes, hugging our frickin' oil. Now, this next statement we'll have to blur it out and, censor it a little bit, but he says the political leadership of our country must perish. They are inherently insane and they are traitors. They should be dealt with. The Americans have just extended their existence for several more centuries, while ours will end in a month. They're panicking, folks, and it's no surprise why. We got...
Another key aspect of this development that is important to touch on is the reaction and position by certain politicians to Maduro's capture, which now contradict their previous position on the issue. First up, we have an X post by MJ Truth Ultra showing Chuck Schumer from 2020 criticizing Trump for not ending the Maduro regime, followed by a clip of him criticizing Trump for capturing Maduro without congressional approval.
He brags about all these things he wants to do or is doing, but his actions belie his words. Maybe the best metaphor was his claim to bring democracy to Venezuela. There was a big policy there. It flopped. If the policy was working, Juan Guaido wouldn't be in the balcony here. He'd be in Venezuela. He'd be sitting in the president's palace, or at least waging a fight to win. He's here. And the president brags about his Venezuela policy? Give us a break. He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began.
So what can the Congress do about it is the next question.
Well, the next question is very simple, and that is that we have the War Powers Act. That's a privilege resolution, which means the Republicans can't block it. Tim Kaine and I and Rand Paul are sponsors of it. It's going to come to the floor this week, and if it is voted for, if it's voted positively in both houses, then the president can't do another thing in Venezuela without the okay of Congress. We have to pass it.
President Trump say that he intends for the United States to run Venezuela. It was reckless. It was dangerous. And looking at the president's demeanor, he didn't even seem to be aware of how dangerous and reckless it is. Let me be clear. Maduro is an illegitimate dictator, but launching military action without congressional authorization, without a credible plan for what comes next, is reckless. Now, I was in the skiff on 3 different occasions, as recently as December, and I asked the administration, I asked them, are you pursuing regime change? Are you intent on taking military action in Venezuela, Venezuelan territory? And they assured me that they were not pursuing those things. Clearly, they're not being straight with the American people. So I've been talking to so many members of my caucus today. Everybody is very, very just totally troubled, worried about how dangerous this is. Let me lay out just a few of the actions that have already been taken to hold the Trump administration accountable. First, Leader Jeffries and I called on the Trump administration to brief the Gang of Eight immediately, followed shortly by a briefing for the entire Congress in the beginning of next week.
The next hypocrite up is Senator Chris Van Hollen. The first X post is from 2024, where he declares that Maduro absolutely lost the election, is not legitimate, and has to be removed from power. And this is according to Mays on X, at Mays Moore. Here's the grifter known as Chris Van Hollen in 2024 declaring that Maduro absolutely lost the election, is not legitimate, and has to be removed from power.
Well, we stand with the Venezuelan people who overwhelmingly, it turns out, voted for Gonzalez and against Maduro. This is why many of us called immediately for transparency, for the Maduro government regime to release the results. And there's a reason, Jose, that they hid those results, because we now know, because we've seen results that were released by some of the opposition figures from about 80% of the polling places, that Gonzalez has, won comfortably here. And so this is clearly an effort to deny the will of the people. Maduro lost, right? He is trying to cling on to this claim of legitimacy that he won when all the evidence shows otherwise. So this is why Secretary Blinken did, in my view, the right thing, recognizing the real winner here, Gonzalez. And this is why the United States is now going to use its levers and influence to push for a negotiation, to have a transition to the truly elected leader, Gonzalez. Now, obviously, we know Maduro and his cronies do not want to go quietly into the night, but the United States needs to work with our partners and allies in the region to ratchet up the pressure on behalf of the Venezuelan people.
The following post is also from Chris Van Hollen, claiming the removal of Maduro by the Trump administration is an illegal act of war to replace Maduro and grab Venezuela's oil for his billionaire buddies. Talk about being a hypocrite. Trump and his cronies can try to dress this up, but it is an illegal act of war to replace Maduro and grab Venezuelan oil for his billionaire buddies. Full statement below. He says, the American people did not ask for this act of war to bring about regime change in Venezuela, nor did Congress authorize it. President Trump has put our troops in harm's way, and he has not provided a clear, fact-based rationale for these actions, nor the long-term strategy following these strikes. This administration owes the American people and the Congress immediate answers. The act of war is a grave abuse of power by the president. The Trump administration is repeating the worst mistakes of our past and endangering American lives. Yet not one service member was killed in this operation, I want to point out. And their motive for doing so is a farce. Oh, really? Okay. Well, let's see, won't we? Trump seized Maduro and his wife just weeks after he pardoned the former Honduran president and notorious convicted drug kingpin Juan Orlando Hernandez. Maduro is a dictator, but his regime did not pose an immediate threat necessary to warrant U.S. military action on foreign soil without congressional approval. This is not about demolishing a dictatorship, as we've seen Trump cozy up to dictators around the world. This is about trying to grab Venezuela's oil for Trump's billionaire buddies. Congress must not abdicate its constitutional authority and allow control of the world's most powerful military to fall into just one set of hands. And finally, we have Chris Murphy with his blatant hypocrisy. The first X post below is Chris Murphy in 2024 stating his stance on Maduro. Everyone take a moment, this is also by Mays Moore. Everyone take a moment and listen to Chris Murphy in 2024 explain how the illegitimate Maduro remaining in power causes a crisis at our border.
So over the past decade, Nicolas Maduro, the brutal dictator of Venezuela, has presided over a stunning collapse of the Venezuelan economy that has caused nearly 8 million Venezuelans to leave that country, most of which destined for the United States. Part of the reason why we saw 10,000 people showing up at the border every day last year, a number that the United States just can't handle with current resources because of the meltdown of the Venezuelan economy. And so it's no surprise that in the election that was held this week, Maduro clearly lost. The briefings that I've received today suggest that Maduro not only lost, he probably lost in a landslide and is attempting as we speak to steal the election. If he's successful, not only will Venezuela continue to spiral into political and economic chaos, but you will see more people come to the southern border. Maduro is now in a corner. We're working with our allies and our partners in the region to try to force him to accept the results of this election.
The next one is from this year, where Dana Bash calls him out on CNN for reversing his previous stance on the Maduro issue post-successful capture. Democrat Chris Murphy, who opposed the successful raid to capture Maduro, gets confronted by CNN for previously calling him to be outed. CNN, in 2019, you wrote an op-ed and you called for Maduro to be gone.
In 2019, you wrote an op-ed and you called for Maduro to be gone. You said, let's get one thing straight. There should no longer be any debate about Maduro's lack of democratic legitimacy. The Trump administration is right to put restoring Venezuelan democracy at the center of our approach to this crisis. A return to a stable democracy is in the interest of the Venezuelan people and the United States and the hemisphere. We don't know what's going to happen with regard to the civilian leadership there. Tom Cotton was just here saying that he hopes that there are democratic elections. Isn't that what you want?
Well, the rest of that article right, was a criticism of President Trump's early moves to saber rattle around regime change.
We also have a list of alleged U.S. senators who have taken financial kickbacks from the Maduro regime, according to Venezuela's ex-chief intelligence officer. And while this should be taken with a grain of salt for the time being, it certainly would explain some of the hypocrisy and backpedaling that has been done by some of the Democrat politicians. And this is according to Luana Tiffany Thies Buchanan on X. Here is a list with all you... Oh shit, I gotta not click that. It keeps opening a new link. Sorry about that. Here is a list with all U.S. senators who got kickbacks from Venezuela's regime. Drug trafficking money, according to Maduro's ex-chief intelligence. Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul, and Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, etc. It's been reported that Venezuela's chief intelligence officer has reportedly sought asylum in the United States and has disclosed a comprehensive list of politicians who allegedly received financial bribes from Maduro and Venezuelan drug narcos. Has any of this been? And I'll just read some of the names here. Joni Ernst, Iowa. Mitch McConnell, Kentucky. Rand Paul, Kentucky. Bill Cassidy, Louisiana. Susan Collins, Maine. Angus King, Maine. Chris Van Hollen, oh, that makes sense, Maryland. Angela also Brooks, Maryland. Elizabeth Warren, Massachusetts. Ed Markey, Massachusetts. Gary Peters, Michigan. Sheldon Whitehouse, Rhode Island. John Thune, South Dakota. John Cornyn, Texas. Bernie Sanders, Vermont. Peter Welch, Vermont. Mark Warner, Virginia. Tim Kaine, Virginia. Patty Murray, Washington. Maria Cantwell, Washington. Jim Justice, West Virginia. And there's much more. I'll encourage you to go and check that out from the article. It's all sourced. And that's not even touching on the fact that it is suspected that Dominion Voting Machines was outsourced by the CIA to Venezuela. But we will touch on that another day. If you enjoyed this article, feel free to drop a comment and share, as this is the first article after the relaunch of News4us.world. We will be writing more articles in the days, weeks, and months to follow to keep you updated on all the latest news. All right, so we have that. And now we're going to watch a clip about the residents of the largest Venezuelan community in the U.S. and they celebrated Maduro's capture. So let's see how the Venezuelan people feel about this.
Fox Noticias anchor Andrea Linares is in Doral, where some are celebrating the events of last night. Andrea.
Good afternoon once again, and as you just noted, well, things are resonating loudly here in the city of Doral. Let me remind you, it is a home to the largest Venezuelan community in the United States, and celebrations are really erupting at this time. Let's take a live look at this scene right now. Dozens and dozens of cars lining up, waving the Venezuelan flag. You can hear music, people embracing, tears of joy as they chant freedom, freedom for their country. I had the opportunity to speak to several of these families. There's a very interesting story. A woman who was meant to fly out of South Florida. She was supposed to head to North Carolina today. Guess what she did? She missed her flight. She said it was worth it. She had to be here in South Florida celebrating this huge moment for the Venezuelan community. I have right here with me Daniel. He's part of this community, and I want you to describe what that moment was like when you got the news overnight.
Well, it was a huge surprise for me. I woke up at 5 in the morning, and then I looked at my phone and I got like 1,000 messages for different group chats, okay? I mean, I got no words to explain what's going on right now. I think our people, our country deserves this for a long time. I haven't lived anything but Chavez and Maduro. So I'm beyond grateful. I mean, I think I'm so happy for Venezuela. This means everything. It's time for celebrate. Better times are coming.
And just like you, Daniel, a lot of people feel exactly the same way. They tell me they were born when Hugo Chavez was in power, then Nicolas Maduro, and all they know is a country with basically in the middle of poverty with so much economic hardship, and they've left everything behind in search for a better life. I also spoke with Angelica. Her story is unique. She got to the United States 3 years ago. She left everything behind, including her mom. And I want to know how significant this moment is. You've spoken to your mom, but you were telling me what you really look forward to one day is reuniting with her once again, Angelica.
Doesn't words to explain that is me, for me, for all people, and for my mom. Definitely, I want back to Venezuela. I have more than 5 years don't see my mom, so this is a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica. That is the sentiment here today, a sentiment of joy. There is still some uncertainty as we continue to see and monitor the situation in the region to see what comes next and how this whole transition will play out. I also asked them, have you spoken to your family members in Caracas? It's very interesting because within Caracas, the sentiment is very different. People are staying home. They are not heading out to the streets to celebrate. They are celebrating within their own homes because they are afraid. They are afraid of possibly seeing any acts of repression against them. So we will continue here live in the city of Doral in South Florida, speaking to the Venezuelan community as they celebrate this moment. John, back to you.
Yeah, the joy there is absolutely palpable. Fox Noticias anchor Andrea Linares. Andrea, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
All right. So, why don't you give your input on the whole Maduro situation with him being captured and deposed, Robin, and then I'll give my thoughts on it. And I wish my AI would stop messing with my centering. Go ahead. Unmute yourself.
I'm sure the AI is doing what it thinks is best, Stephen.
Well, it's not. It's making things more difficult for me. I didn't give it permission to auto center my camera. I don't like it when it just does that shit by itself.
Well, I gave mine permission, and I don't know how to revoke it now. So, be careful with AI. Once you've given it permission to do something, it might be something it's one of those things where you can't necessarily reel that back in. But as far as the Maduro situation, I think that it's the significance of these developments really could hardly be overestimated, because in Venezuela, yes, people are like, it's about the oil. He wants the oil. Well, there is that. Yes, absolutely, positively. It was American companies that went into Venezuela that developed their oil infrastructure, that helped them to get the oil out of the ground, that built refineries for Venezuelan oil. It's a heavy crude. It takes a particular kind of refinery to refine it. And the United States is one of the places that built those refineries to assist Venezuela with that. And we had agreements with Venezuela that were longstanding. American companies were involved. And in the time when American companies were involved in helping in Venezuela develop their oil infrastructure and purchasing oil and partnering with them, that is a time when Venezuela experienced a tremendous economic growth and a tremendous boon in their economic well-being among the Venezuelan people. It brought in massive amounts of money to the Venezuelan economy, and the people were brought out of a fairly impoverished state to a fairly prosperous state. So this ended when what was it, Che Guevara before Maduro came in and instituted the government that Maduro carried on. And
I mean, Hugo Chavez.
Hugo Chavez, that's the one. Yeah, Hugo Chavez came in and I think what basically happened is they nationalized the oil and they began to, and I have friends from Cuba that tell me that when Cuba was taken over by a communist regime, that what happened was they came in and just, went up to business owners and said, now the government owns your property. Now the government owns your business. Now the government owns your farm. And it it meant that people were stripped of their wealth overnight. And ever since, the Venezuelan people, if I understand from what I've researched, speaking with Venezuelans and researching online what Venezuelans have to say, that the Venezuelans have been suffering under this because now they are once again greatly impoverished to the point where 8 million Venezuelans fled the country. And Maduro has made it very clear that he's no friend of the United States. He has made it kind of Venezuelan policy to cooperate with narco terrorists that are flooding this country with fentanyl. And we see that in our cities. I can walk right downtown where I live and see people that are slumped over so far they're unable to stand up, that are passed out on the streets in odd positions or standing in a coma because and it's fentanyl that's doing this to people in addition to the fact that we're losing hundreds of thousands of our citizens to fentanyl. It is a plague upon our
Not to
society.
mention all the animals that might have been lost or even OD'd and had to been brought back with Narcans. Like my Gizmo.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is a plague upon our society, and Maduro is actively or was actively
Yeah.
involved in promoting and helping to create this problem. The Chinese are involved. Much of this is Chinese fentanyl that's coming across the border from Venezuela, and the not to mention that some of the now I have friends that are Venezuelan, as I've already said, but there also was an influx of Venezuelan gang activity into the United
Yes.
States, bringing the drugs
Well,
and
you're
getting.
in Aurora, Colorado, are you not? Wasn't that where that apartment complex was taken over? So you know firsthand.
It wasn't an apartment complex. My sources tell me it was 5 apartment complexes.
5 apartment complexes. Holy shit.
Yeah,
Damn. And that was Tren de Aragua, right?
and
Which
Nicaragua, the
has ties to
Venezuelan
Venezuela.
prison gang, as it's been described in the news. And the difference that I saw personally was going to the grocery store. There were times when we were accosted by people that were menacing, saying, "You have to buy our groceries or else." And we had to defend ourselves. It was, and we walked into one of our favorite stores and saw people that obviously were migrants that grabbed thousands of dollars worth of nutritional supplements, loaded up bags, and walked out the door. And the policy was don't stop them because they could be dangerous. And and with the politics the way that it is, the way that this is often handled, I also have sources inside the police department that tell me this is how it works. The police pick them up for crimes, they bring them to the jail, they are booked in, and then they go before a judge who lets them right back out. Because
And that's a sanctuary city policy, right? That's what
yeah,
sanctuary
that's
cities
sanctuary
do,
city
correct?
policies.
So folks, people, they arrest them for a crime, then they just release them back out into the city. And then ICE has to go find them, which puts everybody in the community in danger and at risk.
Right.
Which is why we ended up having the whole situation with Renee Good, who was obstructing and was blocking her vehicle in the road, trying to obstruct agents from doing their jobs to go after a pedophile migrant who didn't belong here. They're not just picking up black and brown people, folks. They're doing their job according to the Constitution and the law. And I'm just like, I'm just
kind of thing,
flabbergasted that people believe that they're picking up just random people and that they're going to stop them. No, dude, like, hello, have some common sense.
No, there is a serious problem in the cities of the United States that directly resulted from being flooded, not just with immigrants. I have nothing against immigrants. Now, I do
No,
believe
of course
if
not.
you're going to come into the country, there should be a stop and frisk. There should be a why are you leaving your country? What is your background and history? Let us introduce you to the the principles of law that are applicable in the United States. If you intend to drive, you should take a class. There's things that we can do that were done for many years with immigrants, and that's called legal immigration. You go through a process to
Yes.
to become capable of being absorbed into a society that already exists. And if you don't go through that process and you are a prison gang from Venezuela who emptied their prisons and sent them intentionally into the United States, then you're here to do crimes. You're here to exploit the American people. And as we've seen in Michigan, it's not just Venezuelans, and I don't want to say this is the Venezuelan community because that's not accurate. It is Venezuelan criminals that are utilizing the freedom that they're given to do crimes because they get arrested and then get released and then they go do more crimes. My source inside the police department has said that he's seen the same criminal come in 3 times in a week because they get them and they release them and they come and they go do more crimes and they get them and they release them. And many of these are serious crimes that you or I would go to prison for, but because of I believe it's because of the paid off politicians, as we've already seen, we've got lists of politicians that have been financed by, paid by the narco terrorist state of Maduro. And so they turn the other cheek. They are like, oh, well, we have to treat these people well. And it's all this big political game where they're trying to stay in power by turning a blind eye to the crime that these individuals are doing and counting on their vote when the time comes and counting on their money when it's time to finance their campaigns or when it's time to buy their big mansions or when it's time to upgrade their vehicles. So this is what we're facing is an invasion of hostile elements into our society. You, if, I mean, it's not about race, it's about behavior. It's not,
Yes.
it's the behavior of coming into a country and committing crimes is one that, and if you come into a country illegally, tell me one country in the world where you could just waltz in and go commit crimes and 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 be released back on the street to go commit more crimes. As far as I know, there's only one, and this is it. That's insane. That's no
Absolutely
punishment at all.
insane.
It is a betrayal of the American
Yeah.
people, American taxpayers that lived and worked here their whole lives, trying to build something to take their tax money and hand it over to Venezuelan prison gangs or hand it over to Somali terrorists that are creating bogus businesses so they can fleece the
Like the Leary
American
Center.
taxpayer at our cost, taking money out of your and my pocket to enrich themselves, to send off to other terrorists that are against our country. It is an absurd situation, and the way that the American people chose to address this was to elect a president that said, I'm going to do my best to close those borders, which he's done very well with, and to deal with the criminals in our country that came across that are now committing crimes. And that's, I'm sure that there are people that their crime was crossing the border illegally. Well, that is a crime, and
Yeah.
it would be a crime in any developed nation in the world. And to call it a crime is nothing unusual, nothing strange about that. It's perfectly reasonable, but that's not all. They came many of these people came with the intention of pursuing criminal activity, which is undermining the infrastructure of our country. So there's that. Then there's the oil situation. Maduro wasn't isolated in the work that he was doing. He had Iranian drones, he had Chinese radar, and he had Russian missile defense systems. So all of these countries are working there. This is close enough to our border till if there's a true military stronghold there, we could see weapons of mass destruction coming across our borders that we wouldn't have time to react to prevent the destruction of human lives. And that's just saying if it escalated to that point. Right now,
Right.
we're losing millions of people to what is already happening.
Right.
I
And so
lost
I
a
think
son to opiate overdose. I understand this is real and a desperate situation, and it needs to be taken seriously.
Yep.
So this is the real situation that we're looking at in our country. And if we don't do what needs to be done to address the criminal elements, which is to get them out of our country, because you can't correct somebody that's grown up in a completely different culture, pursuing a life of crime, that comes here to pursue a life of crime and rob us and rob our country and rob our, take our taxes and convert it to their own wealth, and take our groceries and convert it to their own household. These things are real and they're happening in this country. And I don't like seeing my brothers and sisters out on the streets drooped over so far they can't stand up because they're getting a hold of these drugs that are tainted. And they're killing us. And we just can't allow that. So it has to be addressed. We elected, the American population, by a large margin, elected a president who said, I'm going to address this. If it's any surprise to anybody, then you're not paying attention, because that is what we voted for, was to get these criminals out. And that is what ICE is doing, is working to get the criminals out. And the fact that the population has been so convinced that this is some kind of tyranny, it's ridiculous. Maduro
ridiculous.
was the tyrant who did not get elected in Venezuela and yet maintained his hold on power. There's where tyranny is.
So, and what kind of government? What kind of government or was Maduro's regime? Was it not a socialist government? That's what I've been hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it falls under the
So-
socialist banner.
So for all those democratic socialists in New York that think that socialism is going to bring them this grand utopia, listen to the Venezuelans. They know what they're talking about. You don't. So that being said, I want to get into this comment somebody made on a post that I made in regards to somebody else's post. So this person is one of the school board members. I'm not going to go into detail on it, but they posted this. ACLU Nevada, stay safe at protests. This post contains legal information, not legal advice. ACLU of Nevada remains committed to protecting the public's right to engage in lawful First Amendment activity, including the right to protest, regardless of viewpoint, and resources in this post are designed to help you protect your civil liberties. The government may be looking for any excuse to detain you. For your awareness, these are some of common actions for which we have seen protesters detained. Stepping off the sidewalk and into the street, even if only for a brief moment. Crossing a street at a crosswalk while the do not walk sign is illuminated. Not allowing space on the sidewalk for others to walk. Not leaving after an inaudible dispersal order is issued. Stepping off the sidewalk into private property. Standing too close to an officer. And they go on to encourage people, if you witness anybody's rights being violated, call this hotline, yada, yada, yada. So I replied to it. I didn't like the way it was worded. I thought it was misleading. And I thought people have a right to know, it was implying that the government's after you. And I don't like that idea, because it's blatantly false. They're doing their job, in my opinion. So I wrote, you do realize that there is a big difference from exercising your First Amendment right to assemble and what Renee Good was doing. blocking the road and intentionally harassing federal law enforcement agents. She was obstructing and antagonizing. Obviously, no one deserves to get shot in that manner, but ignoring the objective facts of the situation don't help anyone. And then Gen H from Gen X chimed in, Stephen, back off. Maybe go out in the sunlight someday. Get some vitamin C. Stick to what you know. And this ain't it. Yeah, it is it. I'm very well versed in the law, and I know what I'm talking about. Thank you very much.
Yeah, get some of that free vitamin C from the sun.
Right. And I responded afterwards, that's a really old pick, by the way. And to be honest, you don't know me well enough to know what I know and what I'm skilled at or what I've been through. Just stating my view and hoping people will at least think or maybe even listen. Wasn't meant to be taken as any sort of an attack, but whatever. And for the record, that's exactly what I did on the day you made this comment. Was spending time with my nephew at the park playing football from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and took him to get his birthday dinner before that. By the way, I get plenty of vitamin C in my system. I eat lemons and fruits with citrus all the time, not to mention using lemon juice for my salad dressing when I have an occasional salad. At first, when I read your comment, I thought you were making some offhanded comment about my being white, which, if that was the case, is in and of itself pretty racist. However, since you don't know me at all or what I'm about, I'll just chalk it up to ignorance. And there's some pictures proving that. My nephew kicking the football. That's it in the air. That's me throwing it. And that's it in the air too. And then we have Junior was here. He etched it into the gravel. 1/10/2026. There we go. So there's that. And then I put, just out of curiosity, what is it that you think that I do know? Of course, no response to any of these, of course, which is fine. But let's get into the next portion of our coverage, because we're going to be covering the... Oh, here we go. Okay, I got it right here. This is the full 4 minutes and 26 seconds of the original video footage that was initially released regarding this, and then we're going to look at the other ones as well as the point of view video from the ICE agent's perspective, and then we're going to wrap it up with an analysis, a full legal breakdown by Nate the Lawyer on YouTube. So here we go.
You! Shame! 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 Dude, what's happening to her? What happened?
I'm gonna stop it there because it does show some blood towards when they go towards the vehicle. I don't want to get censored on YouTube, but everybody can go check it out for themselves. Let's get into the next one, which is from a different angle. This is from a little bit further away, but even though it's a little grainy, you can clearly see he was hit. All right, we're going to slow it down. All right, let's go back and slow it down a bit. 0.5 speed. Now, if you can see right there, that's the opening. She did clip him. We're going to go back and do 0.25 speed. But it appears that she did clip him, in my opinion, but we're going to get some more clarity on that with the point of view footage. right, so there's that. Now this is the point of view footage we're going to be really, I'm going to slow this down so you can hear that there was the thump when he got hit, and then 3 successive gunshots after that. If you slow it down to 0.25 speed, you can make that out. We're going to watch it at normal speed first, and then break it down to 0.5 and then 0.25.
Change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking president. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car.
All right. Let me slow it down. Oh, damn. Why is the video settings not working? Oh, there we go. Oh, it's just lagging a bit. Hold on. Technical difficulties. Give me a second. There we go.
It's okay, we former fucking president. You want to come at us?
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car.
I don't know if you could tell, but there was a thump, and then there was 3 gunshots that rang out after that with the echo that you can clearly tell that is separately distinct from the thump when he's hit by the car. I'm going to put it at 0.25 speed, and then I'm going to point it out for everybody.
Out of the
Okay, right there, that first thump, that was him getting hit. And there's going to be a gunshot you'll hear immediately after that, about 0.25 seconds after this. Okay, so that was the first gunshot. Second and third. Let's go back and replay it one more time. Thump. Gunshot. 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 One more time for clarity, and then we'll go to the next video. Thump. Gunshot. 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 All right, so there's that. And then here's another video of which shows about 3.5 minutes prior to the incident, where she's blocking the road and even dancing in her car, honking her horn. There she is right there. somebody's dog in the background is getting really annoyed by that beeping. So there's that. And here's we're gonna watch the breakdown right now of the ICE agent point of view release, and it's going to be a full legal breakdown by Nate the lawyer on YouTube. This is really insightful because I came to the same conclusion as he did after watching the video slow down, and became clear that she was obstructing, but I'll let you decide. So here we go.
This shooting in Minnesota is crazy. If you're on the left, they're calling it straight up murder.
Brian, I've watched multiple camera angles, including a close-up, slow-motion version of that deadly shooting, and to this old prosecutor, it looked like criminal homicide, some level of homicide, whether second-degree murder or manslaughter. But
then you have the right-wingers who are saying this shooting was clearly justified.
She could have moved when they honked the horn. But when they asked her to move, what did she do? She literally hit one of the ICE agents and got shot. This is when play stupid games, get stupid prizes, and F around and find out if they had a baby, that's it.
So is this murder or is it justified? Let's break it down. Alright, here's a quick message from this video sponsor, Rocket Money. Now, between all of my subscriptions, bills, and random charges, it feels like my money just disappears like a fart in the wind. That's why I started using Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Now, Rocket Money tracks subscriptions across my accounts and shows me what I'm actually paying for. If I didn't want something anymore, I can cancel it right with the app with just a few taps. No stress, no wasted time, no trying to figure out .com to you to determine if this was just the camera footage. We're going to look at the law and we're going to look at the spin from both sides, and I'm just going to leave it to you to determine if this was justified or not. So first, we need to know what happened. Here is the police chief in Minnesota explaining exactly what happened at the time of the shooting.
My name is Brian O'Hara, BRIAN O''HARA. I am the Minneapolis police chief. The preliminary information that we have indicates that this woman was in her vehicle and was blocking the roadway on Portland Avenue, midway between 33rd Street and 34th Street in the city. At some point, a federal law enforcement officer approached her on foot, and the vehicle began to drive off. At least 2 shots were fired. The vehicle then crashed on the side of the roadway.
So the next question is obviously, what was she doing and why was she blocking the street? Here's what the chief said.
So the question was, what can I share about the deceased? There is nothing to indicate that this woman was the target of any law enforcement investigation or activity. This woman was in her car, and it appears then blocking the street because of the presence of federal law enforcement, which is obviously something that has been happening not just in Minneapolis, but around the country.
All right, so now we know why she was there, to prevent ICE from arresting people who may be here illegally. So she was preventing their law enforcement activity. She was using her car to block their path, and something horrible happened. So first, as always, we'll start with the law. So you know what you're looking for when you see the evidence. And then we'll look at the evidence, and you are going to apply the law to the evidence so you can come to your conclusion at the end. So without any further ado, here's the law. There are two cases that we have to consider: Tennessee v. Gardner from 1985 and Graham v. Connor from 1989. These two cases direct how officers are going to be judged if they use deadly physical force against a subject. So we're going to start with the case Tennessee v. Gardner. Now, in that particular case, police shot a fleeing felon in the back. They witnessed the person committing a felony. The person started running away, and they shot and killed the person. And in Tennessee, it was legal to shoot fleeing felons in the back. But the Supreme Court said, no, that's actually not constitutional. And the Supreme Court said, unless the person is a serious threat to the officer or other members in the community, then you can't just shoot them in the back or essentially commit executions on the street because the person's running away from you. And as you can see from the Justice Department's own website, it's called the fleeing felon rule. Next, we move to the case of Graham v. Connor in 1989. Now, in that case, if police are using force, that force is going to be judged by what the court says is known as the objectively reasonable standard. The objectively reasonable standard is an objective standard used to judge an officer's actions. Under this standard, a particular application of force must be judged through the perspective of a reasonable officer facing the same set of circumstances without the benefit of 20/20 hindsight, and be based upon the totality of the facts that are known to that officer at the time the force was used. Now, under the objectively reasonable test for Graham v. Connor, the court gives us three factors that we should consider. Now, these aren't exclusive. There are many other factors that you can consider, but these are three the court points to in the case. One, the nature of the 911 call. Bank robbery, more likely you're going to use force versus cat stuck in a tree. Then you have whether the suspect is resisting arrest. More likely that you're going to be using force. And then last but not least, this is from Tennessee v. Gardner. Remember, if the suspect is a serious threat to other officers or members of the community, then it would be objectively reasonable to use force to stop that threat. So now you know the law, and you're going to apply the law to the facts of this particular case. So let's look at the facts.
In this footage taken by a bystander just before the shooting, we can see Good's maroon SUV partially blocking the street. Good's partner, seen here outside the car, and ICE officer Jonathan Ross are filming each other. You can see Good in the driver's seat, waving cars by while Ross begins walking around her SUV. Two more federal officers arrive in this gray truck and approach Good's vehicle while simultaneously speaking to her.
So, law enforcement officers with lights and sirens and in full uniform are ordering a motorist who's blocking traffic to get out of their vehicle.
The whole encounter, from the moment an officer told Good to get out of her car to the third shot, lasted just 7 seconds.
So now quickly, let's just break down what we just saw.
With the video slowed down, you can see one officer grabs the door handle as Good begins backing up the car. Officer Ross can now be seen filming with his left hand at the front of the car. You can see the front wheel spin forward and Ross draws his gun with his right hand.
So now I want to point you to the front tire and where it's at. The officer's in front of the car and the tire is pointing at the officer. So now if you hit the accelerator, you're going to run right into the officer. And as you can see, the person in the car is hitting the accelerator. That's why the tires are spinning. As you can see, the officer has his gun out. The tires are still pointed directly at the officer and the car is moving forward. Now, at the last second, the tires turn away from the officer, but the officer is struck by the vehicle, which you cannot see from this angle. Now, here's a second angle from the front of the vehicle. So you can clearly see the officer is actually hit by the car.
Well, the slowdown version is showing me that when the SUV pulls forward, they make contact with the agent in the street, and then immediately following that contact, you hear 3 gunshots follow.
So as CNN's expert has shown us, the officer was being struck by the vehicle and returned fire while the vehicle was literally hitting him. Here it is in real time. So next, the officer was recording this incident on a cell phone. So now let's look at the incident from the officer's perspective.
Change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
So now here, the wife is antagonizing the officer, asking him essentially, what are you going to do?
I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car.
So now they realize that ICE is about to arrest them for interfering in federal law enforcement activities. And the wife, who's standing outside filming, tries to jump back in the car.
Get out of the car.
So now what you're going to hear a lot in the media is that the officer placed himself in front of the car. But as you can see, that's not accurate, because while the officer was standing still, the car actually repositioned itself and pointed the front of the car directly at the officer. Now, as the officer was trying to move toward the driver's side of the vehicle to get from in front of the car, the person hits the gas, striking the officer. Now, simultaneously, while being struck by the car, the officer lets off 3 successive shots. So now that you know the facts, now that you know the law, let's bring everything together so you can decide if this officer is justified or not. If we apply the Graham standards to the case at hand, was it now one call? Blocking traffic. Pretty light, right? Was the person resisting arrest? Yeah, the officers were trying to open up the car door to arrest her or detain her, and she resisted. She didn't stop the car and get out and talk to the officers. She was actively resisting. And then last, was she a serious threat to the officers or other members of the community? Well, to the officer standing in front of the car, the government's saying she was a serious threat. She hit the officer with the car. Where if you're on the other side of it, you're saying she wasn't a serious threat because she was trying to run away. The argument here is that this woman's case is more like Tennessee v. Gardner. The police essentially shot a fleeing felon. And the government is saying, no, she was a serious threat to that officer, and he responded with deadly physical force. Now, if you're on a jury, you're going to have to ask yourself, was that officer standing in front of the vehicle, was that a serious threat to that officer? When she hit the gas, car's going forward, and the officer's hit by the vehicle. And remember, the officer's shooting as the car is hitting him, so it's happening all at the same time. Split second. Now, this is where the media spin comes in, because on the left side of the political aisle, they're only showing you one video, this one.
Now, Glenn, that's one angle. There are obviously other angles that are floating around the internet right now, but I think all of them generally show roughly the same thing, which is that there is an ICE agent right at the corner of the vehicle, that the person in the vehicle was attempting to turn the wheel so that they could flee the scene, and of course the ICE agent used that as the opportunity to shoot and ultimately kill the person who was in the vehicle.
Now, just to show you how deceptive that was, he knows there are other angles. He knows there are other videos, and he says that none of them are going to make a difference. But obviously, he's totally lying, because I think this video makes a big difference in the way you analyze what happened. So now you know the law, you know the facts, and it's going to be up to people like you to determine if this officer is going to go to jail for murder or some type of homicide charge, or if this was a justified shooting because his life was in danger. Was he being reasonable, or was this criminal? I'll see you in the comments section. My name is Nate the Lawyer. I'm out. Peace. Okay, so now the screen has gone black, and for those of you who have watched to this point, I want to now give you my opinion, because I wanted the video to end, and now you to hear exactly what I think. Now, for those of you who don't know, I got 10 years of law enforcement experience. I also was an assistant district attorney, and, you know, I've been a defense attorney for a long time. This is just my evaluation of the facts as they are. I think the officer has a good defense, and I think a conviction here is probably going to be very, very unlikely, even without the political nonsense. The reason why I think is because when the vehicle goes forward and the officer has the gun pointed at the vehicle and he's actually hit with the vehicle, if that happens, then I don't think there's really going to be any court that's going to say that that's not a serious threat. And for those facts to manifest themselves, it's going to probably lead to this officer not being charged with anything. They may say this is a good shoot. And in this case, I can see both sides where you could say this may not be as clean a shoot as you want, but I don't think this officer will go to jail. I don't think there's going to be any charges brought. And if there are charges brought, they're going to be brought in vain, because soon as you put an officer in front of a vehicle and the vehicle goes forward and the person's pressing the gas, it's honestly going to be almost impossible to convict that officer. It just is. It's standing in front of a vehicle that's coming at you is a serious threat. And a serious threat doesn't mean it has to kill you. It just has to seriously injure you. It can break your leg, for instance. That's a serious threat. Also, there's a lot of hindsight going on with the political commentary. Like, oh, you see, the officer could have moved out of the way, could have done something else. And the law doesn't work that way. It's not about what could have been done. It's what happened. You're supposed to avoid looking back and saying he should have done this. What happened at the time, and was he being objectively reasonable with the threat that had confronted him? Now, some people are saying it's the officer's fault because the officer is standing in front of the car and the officer placed himself in danger. Well, I'll say this. Two things. Number one, if there's a bank robbery, for instance, officers run into the bank and try to stop the bank robbers by shooting them. The bank robbers are killed. Do you think the bank robbers' argument is going to be the officers intentionally placed themselves in harm? No, because a crime was being committed and they were going to stop that crime. The second response to that question is that the officer being in front of the car doesn't give the person sitting in the car license to hit the gas and run down the officer. And then if the officer responds with deadly physical force, the person say, well, the officer was standing in front of my car, so I can kill them. That is not the way it's done here in America. Now, some people may say that it wasn't proportional. He overacted by shooting at the car who was turning away from him. But at the point in which he's hit by the car, he's in front of the car enough to make contact with the car. And I think that is going to be the determinative factor in this case. Now, if you disagree with me, I'll see you in the comment section. But I wanted to at least give you my opinion to show you that this case I'm struggling with, but tie generally goes to the runner. And in close cases like this, they're going to side with the officer. That's generally our system. But again, I'm not 100% positive that that's how it's going to happen or go down, but we'll see. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe to like great YouTube stuff. I'm out. Peace. Well, that's why you're listening.
All right, so that was insightful and gave us some interesting analysis on that. I think he's accurate. I agree with his assessment on that based on the facts and what we know of the law. And so you want to give your 2 cents on the whole situation, Robin?
Well, this is heartbreaking. It is really heartbreaking because from all accounts, this was a person with a lot of good qualities, and their life ended. And that is a loss to all of those who knew and loved her. And I grieve with them for the loss of human life. I'm grateful that I'm not the person on the jury, because when you see something like that, you want people to be held responsible. And was it excessive force? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. that that could that officer have felt that he was truly in danger? I can see how, from his point of view, it looked like he was in serious trouble. He was in serious danger.
He was also dragged, I think, 300 feet back in this last summer when doing an apprehension of an undocumented migrant. So that's come out as well. So I mean, he's obviously got PTSD from that, which could have added and contributed to his split second decision making as well.
Well, it also puts him in a position where if a car is coming at you, it becomes reasonable to, in that fraction of a second, decide that this could be very serious danger. Anyone would see in a car coming at you could say this could be very serious danger, but especially someone who has had the experience of being dragged by a car and grievously wounded by that and taking time to recover from that, then you're put in a position that's so similar that it is, you're going to be more acutely aware of the fact that this is a very dangerous situation to you. It's a dangerous situation to anyone. A car is a weapon. That's one of the things I told my kids when I was teaching them how to drive was I want you to understand you've got a 2-ton weapon here or so, and if you don't pay attention to what you're doing with it, you can seriously harm or kill people with a car. It is a deadly weapon if it is not carefully controlled in the way that you use it. And but the sad part to me, I mean, it's all sad, but the sad part to me is that the people that put her up to it are the people that are billionaires that are paying protesters to go out and make a show of let's stand up to the police, let's stand up to ICE. And yes, there are honest to God individuals who do this because that's the way they feel.
And they believe what they're being told by their party leaders. Like I mean, I think it's highly irresponsible for Tim Walz and Mayor Frey to freaking be doing this simply because it puts people's lives in danger. I blame them. And,
Right,
and the mainstream media for putting this in people's heads, for lying to the American people and getting people riled up to the point where they're putting themselves in a situation that could put them at risk of harm. But they don't know that they've been lied to. I mean, they may not know that. They actually believe what they're doing is for a right cause, and all.
Right.
So I don't
And
particularly put blame on them. I blame the leaders who encouraged it and who advocated for it and who are lying to them. They need to be held responsible.
The same level of monetary corruption that has our representatives getting paid off at the governmental level to look the other way with Maduro's crimes and pretend like it's some big crime that he was stopped from his criminal activity in his own country and that country was liberated from a dictator. For them to pretend that, oh, somehow this is an American dictator that's doing criminal activity by taking this guy out and push that narrative it's irresponsible. And what it does to people is it puts something in their heads that they then believe, and they have every reason to believe. They've got what they believe to be trusted information sources telling them, oh, this is what's going on. And you all need to come out of the safety of your homes and put yourself into the middle of police and gang members to try to protect the gang members from being arrested. And I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm talking about gang members, but that's what I'm talking about. Because why? Because they're close enough to my neighborhood till I see what's going on in my neighborhood from the presence of gang members from another country that have taken over a neighborhood, and businesses are destroyed, demolished, buildings are closed, people are falling over on the sidewalk from drug overdoses. And it's a serious, serious, serious assault on America that has been brought into the country by paid off politicians and a media that's controlled by people who want the chaos because they want to consolidate their power. They want to impoverish the people. Why? Because a free and thinking American public means we're not going to be dominated. We're not going to be, you can't control people who
I was just going to say we can't be controlled.
Right. Well, now the process though is to impoverish the American people, both mentally, physically, and financially. And we see all of those things happening. We see that there's a huge, huge, huge media empire assault that is against people thinking for themselves, and they keep pointing the finger. The left says it's the right, and the right says it's the left, and they all point the finger at each other when in fact it's the billionaires that are paying off the protesters. It's the billionaires that are financing. And what is their motive? Their motive is to keep people from recognizing and realizing that there's a unified front that is meant to surround you mentally, emotionally, physically. Emotionally, how they do that? Fear. Invoke fear all the time as much as possible. Why? Because fear shuts down the rational thinking capabilities. It's fight, flight, or freeze. When you're afraid, the limbic system takes over and you don't think, you react. So keep everybody in a reactive state, keep them afraid, impoverish them by diminishing their ability to earn.
That's what I call reactionary. I've heard other definitions of the word reactionary, which I think it's kind of misleading, but my definition of reactionary is when you're in that fight or flight and in a pure reactive state because of it and are not thinking critically because of the fear aspect. And they know this. They know this damn well. The media fucking knows this. They do this shit all the time.
Well, that
pisses me off because they're lying to us and people believe it.
There's
people buy it.
That own tech companies that research every kind of human motivation so that they can control people, both for the purpose of selling to them and for the purpose of manipulating them into a position where they do what the bigwigs intend for them to do. Propaganda is a science that has been practiced by every regime in the world to some degree or another, but especially in communist nations when they set out to take over a nation, or socialist nations. Remember, the Nazis were a socialist organization. Yes,
they were.
Many countries throughout history that you can look at socialism and see the tremendous successes that they've had all over the world, which is zero. And, people being convinced that this is the solution because they're being assaulted both economically, financially, and spiritually. They're taught that your religion is not something that you should ever share because someone might take offense at it. Someone in some other religion might take offense. They're allowed to promote their religion, but you shouldn't. And these kinds of rules that have been introduced into society.
They fly in the face of separation of church and state.
by design to separate people, to keep me from taking your hand and you from taking my hand, and us uniting as brothers and sisters and saying, we the people, but we the people are the ones who are a danger to those who wield power. So what do? They divide us and point us at each other and say, go fight them. And that's what's going on. And people are buying into it to the point where they don't even recognize or realize that their own interests are being undermined by their own actions because they're taught a line of propaganda that says, "Oh, we have to approve of everybody. We have to be kind to everybody. We have to when we capture someone who is obviously doing criminal activity, but they're brown-skinned or they're from another country or we let them go because why? Because we're liberals, because we're kind to people." That's idiocy and foolishness.
Very, very foolish.
And it's uh, uh, disguised under a mantle of something
compassion. It's disguised as compassion and empathy, but it's weaponized compassion and empathy.
Right. And when you weaponize people's compassion, that's a masterful stroke of mind manipulation, because it breaks my heart to see people go up against the ICE agents, the police, and get killed. But I can't remember I think it was Karl Marx that described the people that would follow the dictates of the propaganda as useful idiots. And it's a nasty term.
Yes, I believe that was Karl Marx.
It's something accurate, because he said, you can persuade people that something is so and get them to do your will. And then that you can get them to turn on their brothers and sisters. You can get them to be a destructive force in society. And then you don't have to do it. You just convince them to do it. And then you've got control of the society and you can rob the whole bunch blind. And if it weren't so clear and obvious, in Minneapolis, for instance, how many daycares are phony daycares that were just set up for no other reason?
The Leering Center.
Just to fleece the government being the taxpayers, and send the money off to terrorists and support a rich lifestyle by doing nothing, offering no value, but taking from others without compensation, and we have people standing up in the streets and fighting and saying, we need to stop hurting these fine people because of the color of their skin, or because they're from this country or from that country or whatever. Their wrongdoing should be excused because we're kind and compassionate and tender-hearted people. It's insane, but it is
insane.
Orchestrated, and that's what
it is orchestrated. Yeah, no, absolutely, it's orchestrated. And I want to make a point to people that I worked with here locally on the school board meeting issue. They get pissed off about tax dollars being misappropriated for nefarious purposes by people on the board or by former superintendents. This is just another example of tax dollars being misused. Whether or not it's actually to the full extent that that's being perpetrated, that's being alleged to, don't we owe it to ourselves to find out what the facts are so we can get accountability and justice under the law? Nobody's suggesting that we're going to accuse the whole Somali community or the whole any community of us, but we need to know the facts and we need to know what's actually happening, because it should piss you off as much as it pisses me off that billions of dollars potentially have been stolen from the Minnesota taxpayers as well as the United States taxpayers. So it's we need to be cognizant of that. Can we really afford to just say, oh, no, it's not happening, without actually looking into it? And I don't think that we can.
And of course, the other part of that is, who's getting paid off in the government that makes it so easy and so possible for this to happen, because that's happening too. And those are criminals also that
I
need
want those criminals held accountable more than the rest.
yeah, because if it's if it's the governor of Minnesota, if it's people in Minnesota that are in politics, they need to get the hell out of politics. But more than that, if they did activities that financed criminals, they need to be prosecuted under RICO statutes. That's a racketeering, influence, corrupt organization, and they need to be brought up on charges and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, because they took the public trust when they adopted a public office. Whether they
Exactly.
were elected or appointed, it doesn't matter. They have the public trust, and they abused that and stole from public coffers, and then probably, were getting paid quite a bit of it in their own pockets as they're distributing out to these phony businesses. And I don't care that it's Somalian. Yeah, okay, in that case, it probably is. But that's certainly not the only ones. I'm certain that it's many different kinds of communities. Many of them could be gangs of people that look like me, and that's okay by me.
I want them held accountable too, if that's the case. I want everybody that's committing fraud held accountable, regardless of the color of their skin.
And the thing is, the people in government often are people that look like me, if you get my drift, and they're just as guilty. They're not more guilty necessarily, but they're certainly just as guilty, and maybe more guilty. Maybe it is true, but it's not because of the color of their skin. It's because of the quality of their character
and the content of their actions.
That's right.
Well, we had a really good show today. Shall we wrap it up?
I think so.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please feel free to go check out the article we did on News4us World. It's in the description. It'll be I'll post it in the comments on X after the live, and we'll be putting out more content in the days and weeks and months to come. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, folks, very much. We appreciate you. Like, share, comment. We'd love to know what you think. And take us to task. We'll have a discussion about things. We're perfectly willing to talk to you.
Don't forget your outro. Don't forget your outro line. Don't forget the outro.
Oh, yes. Remember, folks, when you can't get the truth out of the mainstream media, it falls to citizen journalists such as us to stand up and speak out and bring you the truth. We are Media Now, world.
Good night, everyone.